Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are back with more State Governments and Officials 2025-2026. Today we are looking at Massachusetts. So, let's just go ahead and jump into this, shall we? If I can find my cursor. Anyway, the Bay State, the Pilgrim State, the Puritan State, Old Colony State. I mean, Massachusetts is formed around the Massachusetts Bay. Pilgrims and Puritans were one of the most well known parts of their history. And probably besides Virginia, they're the oldest uh, English colony state. Anyway, we get a good map. You can see where it sits. Very close to the furthest northeast. Not quite the farthest, but pretty close up there. It's in that little corridor called New England. Because you have New Jersey, New York, New Hampshire. That's all the news based off the British locations. But anyway, yeah. That area is New England. So. Capital city, Boston. Most populous city, Boston. Because Boston was the port city, so much derived from the port of Boston. So, yeah. State bird, the black-capped chickadee, and wild turkey. State fish is the cod, because, like we said, it is right next to the Atlantic. So, yeah. But yeah, like we talked about it being in the New England area and everything. It is the seventh smallest state by land area. Like we've already spoken about, small state as far as size, but has an estimated population of 7.1 million and is the most populous state in New England, the 16th most populous state in the U.S., and the third most densely populated U.S. state after New Jersey and Rhode Island. So, yeah. Think about it. As tiny as it is, it holds so many people. Most of them in Boston. But yeah. Anyway, that gives us an overview of Massachusetts as a state. Let's dig in to the Constitution. Their first Constitution was created in 1779 and ratified in 1780. and I believe is the Constitution they use to this day. So they got the one, they didn't need any others. There have been 121 amendments to it, though, including as recently as 2022. But it sets up the structure of a bicameral legislature, which is actually called the Massachusetts General Court, which is interesting because when you think of a legislature, you don't really think of court, but you got to remember this is talking about all the different people who are part of the legislative court, Massachusetts General Court. But it is divided into a Senate and a House of Representatives. It talks about the judiciary being supreme, appeals, and trial, and then the governor of Massachusetts as your executive. So, yeah. Now, with that, let's dig in a little into the government here. Yeah, the Massachusetts General Court. Like I said, we've heard them called legislatures. We've heard them called General Assemblies. General Court's an interesting one. It's unusual that you hear the legislature called that. So it's like, okay. Another thing about Massachusetts that's interesting, it is one of the 4 states that is technically a commonwealth. I believe it's one of the 4 in the U.S., yeah. Secretary of the Commonwealth. Massachusetts and Kentucky, we went over so far as being commonwealths. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and dig into the executive branch. It has 151 departments or agencies in the executive branch and over 700 independent boards and commissions, but the head of the state's executive branch by law is the governor. But it also has 2 types of executive officials that do not fall into control under the governor. So that's interesting. Good constitutional officers are elected officials specified by the state constitution, while independent agencies are created by statute, and the governor exercises only indirect control through appointments. Now, looking at your constitutional officers, those that are elected by constitutional right, you have governor, who your current governor is Maura Healey. You have lieutenant governor, who is currently Kim Driscoll. You have chief administrator, keeper, or secretary of the Commonwealth is actually what they're known as. I was reading their status, but yeah. William F. Gavin, Attorney General Andrea Campbell, Treasurer and Receiver General Deb Goldberg, State Auditor Diana DiZoglio. So yeah. Do we have them up here? Massachusetts. Yeah, here's your governor, Lieutenant Governor Maura Healey, Kim Driscoll. which I think they run as running partners. They run on the same ticket, if I remember right, for Massachusetts. But yeah. Your state auditor, Diana DiZoglio, Chief Accountability Officer for the state government, audits, investigates, and studies to promote accountability and transparency, improve performance, so on. The state treasurer and receiver general, Deborah B. Goldberg. Prudently manage and safeguard the state's public deposits and investments through sound business practices. Yeah. Attorney General for Massachusetts, Andrea Joy, I'm about to call her Joy Campbell. So yeah. And the Secretary of the Commonwealth, William Francis Gavin. But yeah. Next, we was going to talk about the governor's cabinet. Healy and Driscoll, building an experienced and diverse team. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, your cabinet members. Department of Administration and Finance, Matthew Gorkowicz. Department of Education, Patrick Tutwiler. Climate is Melissa Hoffer. Department of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Rebecca Tepper. Department of Energy or Technology Services and Security, Jason Snyder. Department of Public Safety and Security, Gina K. Kwan. Department of Labor and Workforce Development, Lauren Jones. Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Kiame Mahania, or Kiame, I'm not sure. I'm probably butchering pronunciation. Department of Veterans Affairs, John Santiago, and Department of Housing and Livable Communities, Edward Augustus. Is there more below? Yep. Department of Transportation, Philip Ing, and Department of Economics Development, Eric Pally. So yeah, each one of the members here I mentioned. These are the cabinet for your governor of Massachusetts. But yeah, let's look at the cabinet. Now, government of Massachusetts. We've got governor's council as well. 8 counselors elected from districts every 2 years, as well as the lieutenant governor. The council provides for the advice and consent for judicial appointments. Are they the same as... They don't look like they're the same individuals as the cabinet, so this is different. They provide for advice and consent for judicial appointments, judges, extra court seats, blah, blah, blah. Including as well notaries public, justices of the peace, pardons and commutations, and certain payments from the state treasury. Governor is a non-voting president of the council, but is chaired by the lieutenant governor in their absence. So yeah. So the governor themselves does not have so complete, unbarred power in the executive branch, which I think makes a lot of sense. You don't want people too power hungry like we have as our current president. But yeah. Governor of Massachusetts, some more information there again. Maura Healey, your current governor of Massachusetts. Boston, Massachusetts is where the state house sits. Need to be at least 18, a registered voter of Massachusetts, and have been a Massachusetts resident for at least 7 years when elected. Received 10,000 signatures from registered voters on nomination papers. There is no term limits, and it's a 4-year term when you're elected, so okay. The order of succession, as is the case most oftenly with other states and with the federal government, because you have this person next in line, next in line. If the governor cannot perform their duties, you have lieutenant governor, then secretary of Commonwealth, then attorney general, then treasurer and receiver general, then auditor. Which is interesting because usually as an executive leader, federally you see it president, vice president, then Speaker of the House, President of the Senate, and then I think it goes Secretary of State and cabinet members at that point. But yeah. So that's how it works in Massachusetts as far as your executive branches. Finally, let's go ahead and look at the list of governors they've had. Governors of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Your first governor, John Hancock. Also well known for the large signature having been signed on, I think it's the Constitution. Even making it, put your John Hancock here being another term for signature. But yeah. Thomas Cushing, I think, was quite notable as well for early American politics. American lawyer, merchant, and statesman from Boston. Represented the city in the Provincial Assembly in 1761 to its dissolution in 1774, serving as the lower house's speaker for most of those years. But yeah, I think he also took part when the U.S. became its own nation. He served in a few rows, so quite essential. James Bowdoin, again another one. You're going to see a lot of these from Massachusetts because there's a lot of big names that were from Massachusetts, important in the Revolution. But yeah, American politician, active during the Revolution and the following decade. He was a wealthy merchant and served in both branches of Massachusetts General Court. Remember, Senate, House of Representatives. So yeah. John Hancock again. He was first and then the third elected, because Cushing, he kind of took over for Hancock after the first, though he lost his own election go at it. So, but yeah, Hancock, and he would die in office during his second time. Samuel Adams, most often recognized as the beer guy. But yeah, he was like cousin, I think, to John Adams, the second president. Well known as a politician himself. Apparently was governor of Massachusetts. Not familiar with Increase Sumner. There's Moses Gill. The governor's council, apparently chaired by Thomas Dawes, took over for that period there. Then we get Caleb Strong, James Sullivan, Levi Lincoln Sr., Christopher Gore, Elbridge Gerry, everybody's favorite redistricting name, gerrymandering. His actual name is Elbridge Gerry, but it's kind of developed into Elbridge Gerry. We get Caleb Strong, I think. Yeah, it's the second time. And then John Brooks, William Eustis, Marcus Morton, Levi Lincoln Jr., a second time. John Davis, Samuel Turrell Armstrong, Edward Everett, Marcus Morton. There's Marcus Morton. He had a second time. John Davis, there's John Davis. Morton again. Wow. George N. Briggs and George S. Boutwell. So you see a lot of the same names over and over for the first century as a state in the United States. But again, they are a state, but they're also a commonwealth. I keep pushing on that because I want to make it clear again. There's only 4 states that are commonwealths in the United States. We've looked at 2 of them, Kentucky and Massachusetts. But, yeah, that's a look at the governorship, the executive branch. With that, let's look at the General Court, which again, your legislature for Massachusetts. Bicameral, a upper floor, lower floor, Senate, a House. Before they became the General Court, they were known as the Provincial Congress of Massachusetts. Your current leadership: Senate President Karen Spilka, or Spilka. Yeah, I think that's an L in between there. And Ron Mariano. You have 40 senators, which it's hugely Democrat, the state is. So you have a Democratic leaning of 35 seats and 5 Republican seats. And then the House of Representatives, you've got 134 Democrats, 1 independent, and 25 Republicans out of 160 total seats. But yeah. History, blah, blah, blah. Province of Massachusetts, later history. Chambers, the Senate, 40 seats, named for the counties in which they are located. So that's kind of interesting. The counties themselves are your Senate seats. The House of Representatives, named for the counties in which they are created as well. So I guess you've got county such and such 1, county such and such 2, because there's 4 representatives seats for every 1 Senate seat. So, Speaker of the House has historically been quite powerful, exerting significant influence over all aspects of state government. So, yeah, it's a lot of the powers in the people's legislature. Because, remember, America very anti-king, even though a certain president thinks otherwise. But yeah. Let's see. I want to see if they list term links and anything in here, but I'm not seeing it. Blah blah blah. It must be further up here in the general opening. So I overlooked it. Senators and representatives both serve 2-year terms. So senators, same term length as the House of Representatives. We've seen it before, but it's a rarity. Usually senators serve longer terms. There are no term limits. So yeah. That's a look at the legislature, the general court. Now, let's go ahead and look at the judiciary, the court system for Massachusetts. Blah, blah, blah. We've got the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Appeal Court, and then what's called the trial court, which is divided into 7 departments: Superior Court, District Court, Land Court, Housing Court, Juvenile Court, Probate and Family Court, and Boston Municipal Court. Other administrative tribunals they have: Massachusetts Appellate Tax Board, the Massachusetts Division of Labor and Relations, Massachusetts Department of Industrial Accidents, and the Massachusetts Labor Relations Commission. Municipal hearings courts, they are citations issued by municipalities can be appealed to the municipal hearings officer, who is appointed by each town's executive, mayor, or a select board. These quasi-judicial officers hear cases in a similar way as a district court clerk magistrate, by weighing evidence, establishing a burden of proof. Justices of the peace are empowered to solemnize marriages, keep the peace, call meetings of towns and other groups, issue subpoenas, summonses, take depositions, and perform more tasks as prescribed by law. They historically have presided over courts of general sessions of the peace for their individual counties, but have lost almost all of their judicial hearing authority. They can still hear one type of case, dog imprisonment appeals, if a person is unsatisfied with the decision of an animal control officer on how much to fine an animal owner. So a lot of their power seriously has been reduced. Governor of Massachusetts appoint all state court judges with the consent of Massachusetts Governor Council, who we talked about earlier. The council very rarely rejects judicial nominees. But yeah. But that's a general overlook of the court system of Massachusetts. Now let's dig in a little further. Oh yeah, constitutional officer. These are your cabinet members it's talking about that are elected. Not the basic cabinet, but the actual individuals of the executive branch that are elected by the people, your attorney general, and so on. Governor's Council, we talked about. The Supreme Court of Massachusetts. Highest court in Massachusetts. Although the claim is disputed by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts claims the distinction of being the oldest continuously functioning appellate court in the Americas, with a recognized history dating to the establishment of the Massachusetts Superior Court of Judicature in 1692 under the Charter of the Province of Massachusetts Bay. But yeah. Supreme Court of Pennsylvania argues with it, but Massachusetts Supreme Court says, hey, we are the oldest. So there's some contestation, but interesting. They sit at the John Adams Courthouse in Boston, which also houses the Massachusetts Appeals Court and the Social Law Library. And they talk about some of the big cases that have taken place there. Rex versus Preston, talking about Captain Thomas Preston, the officer of the day of the Boston Massacre, was acquitted when the jury was unable to determine whether he had ordered the troops to fire. The defense counsel in the case was a young attorney named John Adams, our later second president of the U.S. Rex versus Weems, all 6 soldiers involved in the Boston Massacre were found not guilty, and 2 more, the only 2 proven to have fired, were found guilty of manslaughter. So, the Boston Massacre is one of these big moments they talk about as being in the history of the Revolution. But apparently, the soldiers, for the most part, were found not guilty. 1783, Commonwealth versus Nathaniel Jennison. Court declared slavery unconstitutional in Massachusetts by allowing slaves to sue their masters for freedom. Your current makeup of the Massachusetts Supreme Court. Chief Justice Kimberly S. Budd, with the Associate Justices Frank Gaziano, Scott L. Kafker, Delilah Argaez Winlant, Sergey Georges Jr., Bessie DeWar, and Gabriel Wolohojian. Ugh. Yeah, Charlie Baker's got quite a few in there. One of the most recent Republican governors for the state. So, yeah, interesting. Next time we'll be seeing a change is 2029 and 2030. Because they have mandatory requirement dates for the Supreme Court of Massachusetts. But, yeah. They are followed up Massachusetts Appeals Court, the Intermediate Appeals Court, created in 1972. Here's most appeals from the 7 court departments of Massachusetts trial courts. It also hears appeals and final decisions of Massachusetts administrative agencies such as the Department of Industrial Accidents, the Appellate Tax Board, and Commonwealth Employment Relations Board. So yeah, your current list of justices for the appellate court, there's a long list, so I ain't going to read them off to you, but yeah, 25 justices sit on the court, 1 Chief Justice, 24 Associate Justices, and I'm sure it's kind of like just divided up based on where they're at that day, what they're dealing with, or whatever. I can't imagine you'd have 25 justices sitting at the same time on the appellate court. But yeah, the Massachusetts Appeals Court. Massachusetts Superior Court. So we're getting into the trial courts. Remember the 7 divisions, one of them. Superior Court, Trial Court Department, original jurisdiction in civil actions over 50,000 and in matters where equitable relief is sought. Original jurisdiction in actions involving labor disputes where injunctive relief is sought, and exclusive authority to convene medical malpractice tribunals. So yeah, your Massachusetts district courts, which here are the districts, the judicial district map. Here's a wide range of criminal, civil, housing, juvenile, mental health, and other types of cases. Extends its criminal jurisdiction extends to all felonies punishable by a sentence of up to 5 years and many other specific felonies with greater potential penalties, all misdemeanors and all violations. So district court's going to be one of the more common courts you're going to see. The Massachusetts Land Court. Unique among the courts and state courts in general because the subject matter jurisdiction is limited to disputes involving real estate property. Yeah. It usually sits in Boston but may hold trials in other locations when necessary. The Housing Court. Trial court that hears eviction cases, small claims cases, civil actions involving personal injury, property damage, breach of contract, discrimination, and other claims. The Housing Court also hears code enforcement actions and appeals of local zoning board decisions that affect residential housing. The current land court is led by Chief Justice Diana H. Horan and Deputy Court Administrator Benjamin O. Adeyinka. It has 15 judges that covers all 14 counties of the Commonwealth and has 6 divisions: Central, Eastern, Metro South, Northeast, Southeast, and Western. So yeah, Massachusetts Housing Court. Massachusetts Juvenile Court, juvenile cases, jurisdiction over delinquency, children in need of services, care and protection petitions, adult contributing to delinquency of a minor cases, adoption, guardianship, termination of parental rights proceedings, and youthful offender cases. Massachusetts Probate and Family Court. Jurisdiction over all family matters such as divorce, paternity, child support, custody, visitation, adoption, termination of parental rights, and abuse prevention. Probate matters include jurisdiction over wills, administrations, guardianships, conservatorships, and change of name. It also has general equity jurisdiction. So yeah, and finally, the divided up trial courts, if I can get my mouse to work properly for me, is the Municipal Court of Boston, which Boston being so populated, yeah, it has its own issues to deal with. Trial court for that hears criminal, civil, mental health, restraining orders, and other types of cases. And also has an appellate division composed of justices that sit in rotating panels of 3, which reviews questions of law that arises from civil matters filed in the 8 divisions of the department. So yeah, it likely deals with the greater Boston area. But anyway, yeah, Brighton, Central, Charleston, Dorchester, East Boston, Roxbury, South Boston, West Roxbury is the divisions of the court. But that's a look at the government and officials for the state of Boston, one of the 4 commonwealths in the United States. Did I call it the state of Boston? State of Massachusetts. I was trying to think there. Anyway, we'll go ahead and end this episode here. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my links and sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.